But that spring in Miami, 25 years after the civil rights movement began, the American dream was on trial.
I'm asking for the black people to be calm, because this time we can't take this sitting down. We must take to the streets again like we did in the 60s.
I wanted to believe in the American system. No more. Never again.
Once again, the nation stood at a racial crossroads. Would America move closer to its promise of equal opportunity and equal justice, or would it back away? The question had been asked a generation before, in the 1950s, when most of Miami's black population lived on the northern edge of downtown Miami, in an area known as Overtown.
Overtown was a viable community in which people had common causes and related to each other. There was economic development, businesses, furniture stores, clothing stores, a soda water bottling company. The professionals, doctors, lawyers, other professionals were there. Youngsters were considered youngsters of the community, so that everyone felt some responsibility for youngsters.
Growing up in Overtown was different from anything else that you could probably even imagine. And I guess because, it was like family. Everybody was like family. There was so much togetherness, so much, everything there was like close-knit.
It was a place, a focal point for black people. Segregation, of course, contributed to that, but segregation caused it to be a community where people had a real sense of community.
Segregation also affected nightlife in Overtown. Internationally known black entertainers could perform on Miami Beach, but they were not permitted to stay at the hotels. Instead, they stayed in Overtown. Clyde Killens featured many of them at his nightclub, the Sir John.
Like King Cole, Sammy Davis, George Kirby, all those guys, when they come down here, they wait at Miami Beach, but they shows in the hotel, they off at 2 o'clock. And they all would come over Sir John. Then they would go in the line and they'd be 7, 8, or 10 years and they're jamming.
But in daily life, blacks remained second-class citizens under Miami's laws of segregation. Protests were staged at downtown lunch counters which refused service to black customers.
Dr. Brown, what do you hope to accomplish by this demonstration?
We hope to eliminate racial discrimination in all public accommodations here in the city of Miami.
In the 50s, the practice of segregation was slow to change, but other changes did affect Overtown, and life would never be the same.
Well, there was an individual in this community who handled about 75% of all the rental property in Overtown area. His name was Luther Brooks. And Luther Brooks came to us to tell us about what some of the plans were for Overtown and the black community. And he brought his maps and everything and showed us, this was about 1959, 1960, how that the only way downtown Miami could expand was to expand into what was then known as the Overtown area, a black community.
One of the major changes would be the construction of this interstate highway system, which would displace many homeowners.
The house was in my mother's name, and she received the letter saying that, I don't remember now exactly what it said, other than by the right of eminent domain or something to that effect, we would have to move. And other people, they compared notes, and other people got the same kind of notice.
I'll tell you what we said, the niggas had to go. So they came out and talked to all of the property owners and told them by eminent domain, this property is needed to build this expressway. Growth is coming on, and sometimes some people lose, and invariably it's blacks that lose.
was very rough on my mother. You see, it was her house that she and my grandmother had worked for. And it meant that everything we had was being just taken away. Even your shrubbery that you had cherished and had planted, and you couldn't take that with you.
Black people were easy prey. They had no political power because they didn't have any people in office. So what government did was they took a little at a time. First they cut the finger off, and then they cut the hand off, and then they cut the arm off, and pretty soon, Overtown's dead.
Ultimately, the expressway displaced 20,000 people, 50% of Overtown's population.
I-95, which was basically developed to get people from suburbia downtown, and in the process destroyed Overtown and that sense of community. All of a sudden you saw concrete apartment houses coming up, what we call concrete monsters, simply because the demand was for space.
We have not been as militant as we should have been. There is no way we should have let Overtown disappear. But we got snookered. And we got snookered because we were not minding our knitting. We should have been there at the governmental board meetings, at the meetings that talk about development. We were not there. And we trusted people that it was going to be okay.
Many Overtown residents relocated into nearby Liberty City, into neighborhoods that had previously been all white. Frank Legree was among the first.
At least 2 weeks after moved in, we were sitting out on the porch one day, and then the mailman came to give us a letter. I thought about saying, hey, who know where we live at already? And when I opened the letter, it said, nigga, get out. I say, there's something. So we laughed about it. There was nothing, because we didn't pay any attention to it. So my mother, she said, oh, this don't sound too good. I said, oh, don't worry about it. I said, it's just somebody, So anyway, 2 weeks later, after we received this fellow, I came home one night, and they called me and said, hey, your windows is all knocked out. Somebody threw a brick and knocked the windows out. Only thing I wanted was a home for my mother and my family to live. And this is all. But they started this picketing. So I didn't just let them walk and walk. So I went outside, got my sprinklers, put it on my lawn, turned the water up as high as I could, you know what I mean? And the water gun, they just started running with the water. So they went and called the police. When the police come, instead of getting them, the police carried me to jail.
I think at that time, most of us in the black community felt that education was the key. And once the schools were integrated and black kids were given the opportunities to get training and everything, then a lot of these other things would disappear.
By the mid-'60s, the success of the civil rights movement promised new opportunities. When Sammy Davis Jr. visited Miami, he encouraged children to be ready to meet those challenges.
It's no longer like, well, man, I'm colored, I ain't gonna make it no more and all that. It ain't like that no more. And what happens is that all of the civil rights, all the marches, all the people who have died in the civil rights struggle will have died in vain if, and the bigots will win out if once the opportunity, once the doors are open, no one is prepared for it.
Many students at Booker T. Washington High School were ready to meet that challenge. One of them was Arthur McDuffie.
To my knowledge, his goal, mine, was to strive for nothing but the best. No matter what you were involving yourself, just strive for the top and nothing but to the top.